Hello, everyone. It's week 6 of the college football season 2014. Hard to believe, but we're almost halfway home, and it's time for another NEC football weekly Google Hangout. We're doing something a little different today. Instead of hanging out with one of our student athletes from the Northeast Conference, we are going to hang out with the FCS editor for the Sports Network, Craig Haley. And before I welcome Craig in, I just need to remind you that today's NEC Football Google Hangout is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com. And now it's my pleasure to welcome in this week's featured guest into our hangout. He's Craig Haley. He's down in Philadelphia at the Sports Network headquarters. And for those of you watching who don't know Craig, I'm sure that you're familiar with the John Claytons and the Chris Mortensons of the NFL level. When it comes to the football championship subdivision, Craig is our John Clayton. So with that said, Craig, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate having you on the Hangout.
Hey, thank you, Ralph. I'm hoping you get me a Sports Center commercial out of that. But yeah, pleasure to be with you. I love talking NEC football, talking FCS football. Thank you for having me on.
No, thank you for joining us, Craig. And I want to start out with talking a little bit about the Sports Network. Of course, it's a newswire organization that covers sports across the globe at all levels. But one thing that it does focus on, and one thing it prides itself on, is its coverage of the football championship subdivision. And I know that for quite a few years you have covered it. The centerpiece, of course, of the coverage is the FCS Awards program. And I would love for you to get into more detail about that as we move along. But I want to start off with the Walter Payton Award, which is the centerpiece of that FCS Awards program. Of course, the Walter Payton Award, given annually to the top player in TS, two Northeast Conference running backs, Kashada Spence from Sacred Heart, Rob Holloman for Central Connecticut. They were on the preseason edition to the Walter Payton Award watch list. St. Francis University's Kahari Dixon was just added to that watch list. So my double-barreled question to you is, what is the selection process like for the Walter Payton Award watch list? And also, what factored into your decision to add Kahari Dixon to that watch list? And of course, you may want to give our viewers a little background of the award as well.
Sure. Well, Ralph, this is the Walter Payton Award is the Heisman of the FCS, outstanding player in the FCS. We've been presenting it since 1987. We recognized way back when our company, the Sports Network, that there wasn't a national voice for FCS football. We created the first two awards, the Payton and also the Eddie Robinson for the FCS Coach of the Year. Mickey Charles, our president and CEO here, recognized that you needed a national voice. The schools have embraced us. Back then it was Division I and AA. Now it's FCS. And we've since added the Buck Buchanan Award for the Defensive Player of the Year nationally, and then the Jerry Rice Award. We're in our fourth year for Freshman of the Year. But the Payton is the one people know the most because it is the Heisman of the FCS level. We start in the summer with a watch list of 20 players. It really bodes well for the NEC that you had two initially. You know, our list is going to grow throughout the season. Now you do have three with Kahari Dixon joining. Selection process, we look for the outstanding players, you know, who mean the most, sort of the MVPs out there. We take input from the conferences on the FCS level. Obviously, there's 13 conferences, including the NEC. So it really says a lot that your conference has three players on there. Rob Holloman's, you know, such an all-round player. He, you know, we're looking at him as a running back, a returner. He can catch passes. He can do it all. Kashardis Spence, obviously, nobody wants to tackle him when he's coming your way at Sacred Heart. So he's coming off an outstanding junior year a year ago. So he made it easy to those two to add them to the watch list in the preseason. Kahari Dixon, I mean, what an incredible story. And, to follow up, Kyle Harbridge kind of being a shadow last year. Everybody knew Kahari's talent from 2 years ago when Kyle sat out. But, Kahari's taken the whole FCS by storm by, leading from day one. He's fast and lanky. He patiently waits for that hole to develop. But he's made it easy on us this week when we added him to the watch list. It's just great having 3 players. In recent years, the NEC has just been home to terrific running backs. I mean, we've become, a game of football of passing, but your league really does know how to run the ball, and that's important. And it's shown this year when you've gone out and beaten non-conference teams, especially those CA teams that you beat.
Yeah, and I know, speaking with Kahari himself earlier in the year, his philosophy was if you can run the ball well, you can control the game, and that's what they try to do. And to me, I know St. Francis has played 2 non-Division I opponents, but Kahari's most impressive games have come on the road at Fordham and then on the road against the CAA team in James Madison. So I assume that the level of competition that Kahari has performed against also factored into that decision.
Oh, yeah. Yes, once he finds that hole, he's lightning. I mean, he's just, he's got that lanky body. He knows to wait and to find that space. Yeah, he can do it against elite competition. He can do it against some of the sub-Division I teams that they've played. But I fully expect that he's going to keep it up in NEC play. I mean, honestly, I don't want to throw the jinx on him, but he's on that pace, to maybe go 2,000 yards this year. That would be something.
That would be incredible. I've definitely seen a lot here in 8 years covering the NEC, but I haven't seen a 2,000-yard rusher yet, and I wouldn't mind seeing one. I believe our league record is actually around 1850 or so. But I want to get into this conversation here, running backs, quarterbacks, because we have been a league that has had some phenomenal rushers over the years, and of course this award is named for sweetness. Walter Payton, one of the greatest ever running the football, but a quarterback won it last year, Jimmy Garoppolo from Eastern Illinois. We know that he is with the New England Patriots now. But as quarterbacks in the NEC, although we've never had a quarterback as a Walter Payton Award candidate here out of the Northeast Conference, we have some good young passers. One of them was a Jerry Rice Award candidate for rookies as a redshirt freshman last year, Duquesne's Dylan Beekle. Beekle's a guy who's averaging more than 300 yards per game. Is he someone who's on your radar and maybe can play his way onto the Walter Payton list at some point in his career?
No doubt, Ralph. I mean, I believe it's 9 years running now that a quarterback has won the Payton Award. So it's really become a quarterback-dominated award. But, I mean, obviously, it doesn't mean it can't change this year. Dylan, yes. I mean, we're very familiar with him from being on the Rice list 2 years ago. And Rice winners have really gone on to be great. I mean, we've had John Robertson and Villanova, they're tremendous quarterback. We had Terrence West, who's now in the NFL. He went from being the inaugural Rice Award winner to being the third place finisher last year in the Payton. Now he's doing great in the NFL. Connor Kupp from Eastern Washington, wide receiver. He could be the best wide receiver out there in the FCS. So he was last year's winner. So it really bodes well that Dylan had that talent initially. He's built on it. Obviously, he's leading your league in passing. He is on our radar. I mean, he's off to a great start. I think Duquesne has a solid squad. So yes, we're certainly looking at him. There's many great players out there, but at some point, we'll give a really hard look, and we'll see where it goes.
Now, I just want to focus on the NEC here for a moment. In particular, it's showing in non-conference play. We know Bryant may have surprised a few folks by beating both Maine and Stony Brook, two CAA full scholarship teams. I know they went down to Liberty, and they weren't able to handle it down in the Inferno down there with the Flames. But regardless of, say, 3-1, Sacred Heart is 3-1 again. They had a little disappointment against Bucknell, but still they have a record, and many of the players back from last year's 10-win season. Duquesne, I know that you wrote something to the effect that it's almost unfair that Duquesne was 0-2 because of who they played early on. Can you just give us a little bit of an analysis of the NEC's non-conference showing, and then some of these teams that have impressed you or caught your eye, and who you expect to compete for this league title?
Sure. I mean, and you mentioned some great performances this year. Obviously, Central Connecticut, getting it started with the win over Towson. I mean, Towson's the number 2 team last year in all FCS. So I like the fact that the NEC goes out and plays tough teams. You want to be set up to win your league, and by playing tough teams, that pays off. What you do in September really does pay off in the stretch run in November. So there are conferences out there that their non-conference schedules not quite as strong as it should be, individual teams especially, but I think NEC does it right. I mean, even this week, Sacred Heart and Delaware, I think that is an upset waiting to happen there. I mean, Delaware better be on guard. I mean, Sacred Heart does have that veteran team. I think it's been a terrific year. Last year, your conference race, the NEC conference race, was the best race in the FCS. All the teams divided by 2 wins and losses. I think it's a product of playing tough schedules in September. Obviously, we've moved into October, but this is how you do it. I'm very impressed. Bryant to do it twice. Is incredible, beating CAA teams. So you've done it right as a league, and I'm sure it's going to continue.
Well, thank you, Craig. We like to hear that at the NEC. I know a number of years ago, a little less than a decade ago, the league started to make an investment in football and went to the scholarship model. Has increased those scholarships incrementally, and we actually do have a team like Wagner, who is a full counter when you factor in their need-based aid as well. And, of course, Wagner has even gone on to play some FBS schools, as we know. So it's something that we've invested here in the Northeast Conference. So it's good to hear that it's starting to pay dividends and that other people are noticing what these Northeast Conference football programs are doing. And hopefully we can have just as great of a race this year as we did last year. I'm going to put you on the spot. I shy away from making predictions because of the position that I'm in, but you can make them. What do you see happening in this Northeast Conference race this year? Obviously, the top 3, Sacred Heart, Duquesne, Bryant, but even a team like Central has shown to be dangerous. So give us the breakdown. Who's going to be representing the Northeast Conference in the FCS playoffs come Thanksgiving?
Well, I'm going to take the easy way out, Ralph. I'm going to go Sacred Heart again. I mean, they just had so much coming back on both sides of the ball. We've all learned there's no sure things. The NEC is really, spread around the wealth as far as, who's getting to the FCS playoffs. I just think Sacred Heart's the team to beat. I mean, obviously they have to go to Duquesne in a few weeks. Tough to win there. I think Duquesne's defense can match up with Sacred Heart. I mean, obviously Duquesne's having a good year with their offense, but coming into the year, I really like their defense. Bryant has really done well, but they have to play those 2 teams back to back, Duquesne and Sacred Heart in November. So that's asking a lot. I'm not saying they can't do it, but I think when it all shakes out, I'm going to go Sacred Heart. I do like how these other teams can come up and knock you off, as it happened last year throughout the season. So I'll go with Sacred Heart, but it certainly won't be easy, especially having to go on the road against Duquesne.
Well, that's fair enough. They're the champions until someone knocks them off. And Craig Haley thinks the Pioneers will be champions again this year. Obviously, we haven't even kicked off conference play, so still a long way to go. October 11th is when we get it started here in the Northeast Conference. Craig, I did want to ask you a question about the NEC as a whole. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that impressed you this year or that caught your eye? I know you mentioned the Central game, or any players that have emerged here in the Northeast Conference, even on the defensive side of the ball. What about Duquesne? They lose a guy who's an All-American linebacker, Christian Kuntz, to injury, but you still seem to like their defense. Why?
Well, Ralph, I think it's really, they've done a good job of developing all units there. I mean, through the years we've thought of Dorian Bell when he came there, but around him, his play lifted everybody else. Obviously, it's a deep team. I just like the fact that they know how to shut you down. I mean, last year's Sacred Heart game, if I remember, was 10-0. I mean, nobody was keeping Sacred Heart to 10 points with the team they had. So yeah, I just think they've really built a solid defense throughout. Jerry Schmidt's a terrific coach. He certainly gets it done. You asked me what stands out to me. I noticed something this week. It's pretty amazing, and I don't think you're going to find it anywhere. But the NEC right now has a different team leading in scoring offense, which is St. Francis, total offense, which is Duquesne, scoring defense, Bryant, total defense, Sacred Heart. To have 4 different teams leading like that, that doesn't happen. It just shows you the parity in the league, and that's why you had a great race last year. I fully expect it again this year. But to me, that really stood out when I noticed that this week about the NEC.
I didn't even know that one, Craig, so thanks for the tip right there. And now, just pulling it back from the NEC and looking at things from a national perspective, we're almost to the halfway point of the season. What has really impressed you on a national landscape this year? I know there's so much, but if you could just give us a few, 3 to 5 headlines of, what's gone on already, and then maybe, if we're lucky, you'll give us a prediction of who we'll see in Frisco come 2015.
Sure. Ralph, it's certainly amazing that we can actually say we're about halfway through the season. I mean, where did it go? I mean, it's been terrific, to have that early kickoff with Eastern Washington hosting Sam Houston, on a national scene. Was terrific. The first game in college football this year. Obviously, what stands out is the continued dominance of North Dakota State. 3 straight national titles. They've won 28 straight games, which is a national record for the FCS. They came right out, beat up on Iowa State by 20 points. I mean, they've been phenomenal how they keep reloading and not dropping off. But I think there are teams out there in a one-game situation. Anybody can lose. I think North Dakota State's probably the best team over the long haul. But Eastern Washington, Villanova, Southeastern Louisiana, even though they have one loss they weren't expecting this year to Southeast Missouri. There are certainly teams out there. New Hampshire here on the East. Coastal Carolina has been terrific this year. I just think in a one-game situation, anybody can really beat anybody. You take North Dakota State deep into a game, you have a shot there, and that's what you have to do. But that has stood out, just how North Dakota State has held off some of these teams. Vernon Adams is having a terrific year as the quarterback. Eastern Washington, and he's just lights out. In fact, I wrote a column today talking about he's the favorite for the Walter Payton. Why isn't he being considered for the Heisman? He's not getting any buzz for that. And years ago, FCS players, when it was Division I AA, they were still getting some votes. So I mean, he's just been phenomenal this year. There's great players out there. I love the parity. I love how every week we're surprised by some of the upsets. I mean, the fact that NEC has beaten 3 CAA teams, that's great. A year ago, the Big South was beating up on Southern Conference teams. People didn't see that happen. It's just become a great game. I love the crowds. I love the passion of the fans of the FCS schools. It feels like your team. When you're at these games, because it's a smaller venue, but the crowds are still electric. So I do love how FCS has gone. As far as Frisco, well, coming into the year, I thought Eastern Washington was the favorite. I picked them. I guess I'll have to stick with it. But wow, North Dakota State has really done well. Eastern Washington has earned its #2 ranking at this point with just a touchdown loss to University of Washington, but. We'll see in the end, but the Bison look like they can head back there to Frisco. I mean, they probably have some home playoff games ahead of them, and that could get them there.
I mean, that would be tremendous if they would make it there again. Of course, with a new head coach, Craig Bohl is over at Wyoming now, so I will hold you to that. Maybe Eastern Washington. Of course, we don't know how the seeding in the bracket will shake out, but I'm going to put you down for Eastern Washington and North Dakota State, right? and you're going to tell me that North Dakota State ekes by Sacred Heart in the national semifinal to return to Frisco.
on an overtime touchdown.
There, you've heard it from Craig Haley. Craig, before we let you go, I know that you'll have a date in December circled on your calendar. I don't know if it's the 17th or 18th. If you can tell the folks about that date. And then I want to ask you, is there any other dates earlier than that circled on your calendar for maybe an NEC game that you're really focused on and looking forward to? So why don't you talk about December and what's special about that, and then maybe just give us one NEC game to circle before you go.
Sure. Well, December 15th in Philadelphia is where we hold the National Awards Banquet. It's all 4 awards: the Peyton, the Buchanan, the Rice, the Robinson. Obviously, the Buchanan's a National Player of the Year, and Troy Moore of Sacred Heart is certainly a candidate, as well as others we're considering for the watch list. But all 4 awards are presented then. We invite the 3 top vote getters for the Peyton announcement. The winner is literally announced that night around 9:30. The other awards, we invite the 3 winners to come and accept their trophy, or in the case of Buchanan, it's a portrait of them. So yeah, that's December 15th. It'll be here before you know. We have a national panel of over 150 media members who vote on these awards. They'll be voting the week of the first playoff game. This is strictly based on regular season exploits. As far as the rest of the season, if there's one NEC game that I'd want to be at, it would certainly be Sacred Heart at Duquesne. October 18th. But depending on what happens in that game, well, that makes November even more important. So, every game counts the same. I mean, even though we feel like one may be bigger than the other, and you still have to go out and beat your opponent. And within conference play, nobody's scared of anybody, so that's why upsets happen. So, but that would be my one pick, would be October 18th, Sacred Heart at Duquesne.
So there you've heard it, some wise words from Craig Haley. I know he's looking forward to the Northeast Conference race. I'm looking forward to it. But first, Week 6, this Saturday, 5 NEC teams will be in action, all non-conference contests. Central Connecticut and St. Francis are idle. With that said, I want everyone to enjoy Week 6 of college football. And, of course, I want to thank Craig Haley of the Sports Network for his time and analysis today. Craig, thank you very much for being our featured guest on the NEC Football Geico Google Hangout. Thanks again, Craig.
Thank you, Ralph. You guys do a terrific job at the NEC. Really appreciate it. Enjoyed being on with you.
And for Craig Haley, I'm Ralph Ventre. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.